Nari Paschatya Deshatarin. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I welcome all of you.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी दंडवत प्रणाम।
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी प्रणाम।
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण प्रभु जी।
Hare Krishna. So we are discussing very important book, Bhagavad Gita. So we are reading the second chapter of this book. This is actually one of the most famous book that mankind knows. The book that and brought comfort to many, what do you say, millions of people across the world. So we will be discussing on this book. This is a very important book. So here we are discussing the first shloka, Sanjay Vacha. Saying Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears. Madhusudana Krishna spoke the following words. This is actually how the chapter starts, and Prabhupada says that real compassion should be not for the body but to the soul. That's actually what Prabhupada is trying to explain in the purport. Compassion should be not to the dress of the drowning man, but to the soul. So Arjuna was a Kshatriya, and this was expected that he shows he is properly doing the duty of a Kshatriya. Now we will try to understand what exactly Krishna is trying to help us understand. So Bhagavad Gita is a book that teaches us to rid ourselves of tendency to violence. And this is one of the most famous book that mankind knows. A book that brought comfort to generations and generations of people, which formed the foundation of life of many people. And Srila Prabhupada also explains in this purport that the ultimate point of Bhagavad Gita is to teach us to be happy in the world at all costs, no matter what. And therefore, it is no coincidence that it was told on the battlefield. So in the circumstances, a very great secret is concluded, because we all know that we all have probably heard that our life is a battle, a struggle. But there is one more point that we should also understand, that it's not a struggle with ourselves. In reality, our life is a struggle with other people. People constantly fight with each other in this world, and we are seeing how the scenario, and they hurt each other. And the war that is going on in this world is permanent, because people are constantly fighting with each other at the level of nations, at the level of cricket teams, at the level of neighbors, at the level of villages, at the level of apartments, and the same family also. So there are constant battles or wars, and it is no coincidence that Krishna explains Bhagavad Gita before the battle, and his goal is he will explain it more clearly. So one of the key verses of Bhagavad Gita in the chapter 18, where he explains that his main goal is to give us an opportunity to understand how not to cause violence and pain to other living entities to greater or lesser extent. That means we don't want to hurt anyone, because we are doomed to hurt other living entities, and we do this all the time and constantly, and experience the same thing on our back also. Like someone is hurting us, we are hurting in response, and this is like endless Kurukshetra that is going on in the life of all the people, and that we see also how people are getting hurt and how they are responding. And now we also got hurt, like country India got hurt, and now it is on to respond. So, and in this battle, there are no victories, because everybody is going to get affected. And Krishna is explaining Bhagavad Gita so that we can emerge victorious from this war, so that we get out of this war, so that this violence or the propensity to for violence that lives in our heart. So in the end, it is completely eradicated, so that we do not have this desire to hurt other living entities. Because people try to stop the wars, they gather peace congress, like peaceful conferences, but wars go on anyway. Like we have United Nations, all the people come, but they cannot stop war. It was found out that our past 3000 years, mankind had 5000 great wars. 5000 great wars. The war is ongoing. Why? Because in the heart of man, there is this tendency to violence. And Krishna wants to get rid of us from this propensity. You want to totally eradicate this violence. Once we become free from violence, our mind is completely calm and then we can achieve perfection. And that is the real happiness. Because as long as this tendency is with us, we will remain here in this material world. In a world where pain always regains and violence always exists. Now there is a paradox. What is the most paradoxical in the Bhagavad Gita? Because we need to understand this initial paradox that Arjuna pretend to be non-violent, right? Krishna is telling you fight and Arjuna is telling I don't want to fight. So it looks like Arjuna is non-violent and Krishna is violent. And now here we are discussing that Bhagavad Gita is meant to free us from the tendency for violence. If we are meant to free ourselves from the tendency to violence, then how does it make sense if Krishna is telling us to fight? So that should be the main important question for all of us. So here we need to understand that this is actually what uh, Krishna is trying to explain to us. He's telling that Arjuna pretended to be non-violent initially. So that is the first thing. Arjuna pretended to be non-violent because he non-violent person, and he pretend very successfully. So much so that even he himself believed. He himself was moved by and he cried out in self-pity. He was saying, I'm so compassionate. So we all know these sincere, pure tears of self-pity. Now, periodically they appear in our eyes also. We may feel how good I am and know how bad everyone else is. Like people have this feeling that I am good, others are bad. And same thing like and sometimes people they are mourning for their own fate. So Arjuna in that position he thinks, oh, I am very good. And Krishna says, dear Arjuna, you are a liar. Although you pretend to be a person who does not want to inflict violence, in fact, you still have a tendency to violence because you do not understand your nature. The more people don't understand this paradox because most of the people reading the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita are completely on the side of Arjuna. And in general, reading all other chapters of Bhagavad Gita, most of the people are completely on the side of Arjuna until Arjuna switches the side to Krishna. Like initially, everybody is siding to Arjuna only. Yes, yes, why Krishna is telling to fight, why there should be violence in this world. So people also object. Many people take objection on Krishna. Why Krishna is telling to fight? But eventually we see after hearing Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna agrees to fight. That means there Arjuna comes to the side of Krishna. And we should also, and he become victorious. And we should also take side of Krishna to be victorious and to get real thing in life. And then Arjuna says, Karishye Vachanam Tava. I will do what you want. So unexpectedly, for many people, they didn't expect. How did Arjuna change? What instruction from Bhagavad Gita changed Arjuna? As such, initially only Krishna tells fight, fight. After that, he don't tell. He just tells about himself and other things. So because we have this misunderstanding, and that is fight, but don't hurt others. So this is actually the most important point. Krishna is telling you fight, but you should not hurt others. How is it possible? So Krishna says, fight, but he also teaches us to fight or live in this world in such a way so not to hurt others, so as to truly fulfill the highest dharma of living entities. So Mahabharata clearly states, ahimsa paramo dharma. So ahimsa is considered, non-violence is considered, lack of this tendency to hurt others is considered the highest dharma, the highest duty. And Krishna says the same thing in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita also. He explains the knowledge. So he explains what are the symptoms of knowledge. Amanitvam, adambitvam, ahimsa, shanti, rarjavam. He says ahimsa. So ahimsa again, it's a person who knows, that means he does not cause suffering to other living entities. And in the 18th chapter also, he fully reveals this secret. So this is the essence, that we have to discuss. How to truly fulfill the principles of ahimsa, even when fighting, even entering into the war also. So there is something called non-violent. That means you are fighting, but you are not hurting. So there is a difference in it. We have to discuss, and that's actually what Krishna is going to teach in Bhagavad Gita. And then there is a crisis of identity. So it was for this purpose that the crisis of first chapter was arranged. The first chapter is a statement of problem statement, we can say. So once you know the problem, we go for the solution. So first chapter of Bhagavad Gita is very important in the sense it is telling us what exactly is the problem. So the first chapter, we already discussed the first chapter. It describes a crisis of identity, oblivion of one's own nature, which begins with oblivion spiritual nature. That means I don't know who am I. That means I don't know my spiritual nature also. And goes into the so the more malignant degree. No, it goes to the next degree. So when a person forgets his material nature, and forgetting his material nature, as well as a person commits a crime against himself and against everyone else. If I don't know who am I am committing violence to myself and I'm committing violence to others also. So people commit all sins, hurt others precisely in a state of oblivion, a misunderstanding of what they are doing, in a state of complete eclipse of mind. And Krishna arranged this crisis of Arjuna, the crisis of identity, that periodically happens to all of us, because the crisis of identity is a state where we face the terrible prospect that we will stop existing. So it looks little technical, but we'll understand eventually, don't worry. The way we are seeing ourselves and will stop existing. So this is the crisis of identity. First, I should know who am I, where I came from. Like we discussed this many times also. This we'll discuss again. Like say when I was 10 years old, I had a different body. When I was 2 years old, I had a different body. When I'm 20 years old, I have a different body. I am now in a different body. What is common? Body is changing. Who is this person? The identity. So we get used to things and settle down. We have some place, we settle down in this place, and suddenly, now some war will happen to some areas of the people, and suddenly something happens, and everything need to be changed. And ultimately, this will happen to all of us. And then how it happens in the form of death. Death will come and say, dear sir, you need to change everything. The way we know ourselves, see ourselves, think about ourselves, imagine about ourselves, the image of ourselves, which we have worked all our life to build, we will not have any more all these things. I worked so hard to build this image. I had to live this image. People consider me something, and I'm thinking, oh, yes, I'm a good person, right? So this will be gone. And this destruction of our temporary identity constitute a crisis. And when a person gets into crisis, and crisis is very good also in one way. Why? Because the crisis that all people they experience, that is especially at the time of death, We have to die many, many, many times. That means many lives we have died. And we go through these critical moments when practically everything must be changed. Our body, the body, our mind should be changed, settled body. We must be rewinded. And but in the moment of crisis that have not uh, that we didn't expect before. So a person faces what he did not know before. He gets even more afraid. And this is actually the first chapter. Arjuna is seized by fear. He becomes so fearful because he has to kill all the people. And it is very strange to hear because he is one of the most courageous people. He's a man who all his life was convinced of being very brave. And literally in the next verse in this, Krishna will say to Arjuna, Arjuna, you are covered. No? Kutastva akashmalabedam vishame samapatsitam anajishtim asargam akirtikaram Arjuna. What are you doing? Klaibhyam maam samagamam partha naitatvat upapadyate kshudram hridaya daurpalyam tattotishta param tapa. So he says, what you consider to be yourself, to be your compassion, is actually not compassion, Krishna says. Arjuna is saying, I am very compassionate. And Krishna is saying, no, no, you are not compassionate. You are coward. So, in other words, some things that we carefully hide and which can be hidden from the time being, even from ourselves also. That means I also don't know who am I. Suddenly some crisis comes, we come to see, oh, I am like this. At the time of crisis comes, and then these things become very obvious. And this is actually very important. So we need to look at them, although it always hurts. In the end, we need to understand who we are and face some of our problems in order to resolve them. And this is actually the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the statement problem. When the problem comes out, when everything comes out, and Arjuna began to mm, mumble excuses, is to say, oh, and Krishna listens, and he smiles. And in the explanation also, Srila Prabhupada, he says that he very clearly gives a picture of what Krishna will tell him. And he tells in the chapter, okay, let's start. And no, just a minute. Picture of what Krishna will tell in this chapter. So, and we'll see the two topics of the second chapter of Gita. So there are two sections. We begin this second chapter, and Srila Prabhupada says that in essence, the second chapter consists of two big topics, right? So first is, so the crisis has two aspects. The obvious of one's, that is one's understanding one's spiritual nature, and resulting from it, the natural, the obliviousness one's material nature. So that means the second chapter, it first explains the eternal spiritual nature of living entity and then explains how to realize this eternal spiritual nature. That's all. So first chapter is the statement problem. Statement problem is I am having a problem with my own identity. There is a crisis. So now second chapter gives the two solutions. He tells what is the identity and to how to realize that identity, the spiritual nature of that identity. So understanding the material nature. So these two things, they're closely related to each other, that it is impossible to simply separate them. So spiritual philosophy, the idea of oneself as a spiritual particle. If I say I'm spirit soul, what should I do to understand it? So generally people have very abstract. So there is certain, you know, uh, there is people, they practice certain things but don't understand how to realize it. So there is certain specificity of our material personality. And now another thing which we'll discuss is the root of all our problems. And because we do not understand who we are, that is the root of the problem. So this is an important point, because in essence, Krishna wants to make us happy, right? And the problem is that we are unhappy, and Arjuna is also unhappy, and Sanjaya speaks about this. He calls Arjuna as Vishidhantam idam vakyam. Vishidhantam means he is grief stricken. So he tells to Dhritarashtra that Arjuna is grief stricken. So the name of the first chapter is Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So come to the world of Vishada. Vishada means despair. Vishada means when a person falls down without strength and cannot do anything. Vishada means depression. So, like, eh, everybody will have some part of that time they feel very depressed. And this is actually, there are people who go into depression. That is very difficult. And yes, this condition has happened to many people. When we can't do anything, we can't move, we don't have any energy, no strength, no enthusiasm. And Krishna begins to heal us from this. He says that the reason for this is the identity crisis. He says, first we know ourselves. He says, you don't understand who you are. Usually, people who face this problem try to treat or solve this problem at other levels, at much more superficial levels. But Krishna looks at the very root and says, your problem is of that you do not understand who you are. So just instead of telling be energetic, be enthusiastic, result will come, be focused, there are so many seminars which guide people to come to this understanding how what should they do and how they should do, and but they don't tell about the identity. But Krishna starts with identity. He says that the problem is that you don't understand who you are. So this is the Krishna's way of solving a problem. Other people who are giving motivations and they're solving the problems in this world, I don't say that they are not able to solve it. They are solving, but it is not a permanent solution, because person end up in the same crisis again and again. But Krishna, he want to give us a permanent solutions for the problem. He says all the problem, the cause is our identity. So unless we understand who we are, we cannot become happy. To be happy, I must understand very clearly who I am. And Krishna gives a clear recipe, a very clear algorithm, how a person can and should understand this. And that's why he gives other processes also to understand how to know that we are not the body, spirit, soul. He's not just telling the problem statement. He is not just telling some theory. He's giving the practical. That's why we have all this yoga. People say, oh, there is karma yoga, jnana yoga, bhakti yoga. So many yogas are there. There are actually methods to understand that how I am not the body, spirit, soul. So therefore, this chapter falls into it's a two parts. The first part is when Krishna explains how one should act in accordance with his material nature. And in the other words, he explains Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga and says that they are inextricably linked with each other. And in continuation of the other, that is in the fifth chapter, third, fourth, two chapters, he explains Karma Yoga only. In the fifth chapter, he will repeat the same and again. And he says, you know, children, like people with a very childish understanding, they are trying to separate yoga from Sankhya, theory from practical. So basically, don't get confused. Sankhya Yoga means Jnana Yoga, and then there is Karma Yoga, that is practice. So first, if I know I am not the body, I am spirit, so I should also act to understand that it's not possible that just thinking that I'm not the body, spirit, soul will make any difference in life. It does not make any difference. We'll still remain like that and we continue to be unhappy only. But when we practice, that's why Bhagavad Gita is about a practical application book. Many people, they say, okay, Bhagavad Gita is telling something, you are not the body. But they don't work on application part. They say we are doing karma yoga, but they don't know what exactly is karma yoga. What should they do? So there is theory and practical, and they are very much linked with each other because practice must be applied to theory. And Krishna explains that theory in 21 verses. He tells only theory. And then remaining 41 verses of this chapter, he explains the practice, which is the essence of karma yoga. Now, we will try to uh, accurately understand the structure of this second chapter, because we need to always see, like, we sometimes get lost in these verses reading. We not know what we are doing, so we do not understand the connections, and this connection need to be kept in mind all the times. So in the first 10 verses, Krishna surprisingly bring Arjuna to his senses with two uh, slaps. He chastises Arjuna. In fact, the first two verses are the description of two slaps that Krishna gives to Arjuna, and how Arjuna slowly come to his senses. Slaps in the sense by speaking, not literally. He just chastises with a slap with his words. And then after that, starting from the 11th verse of this chapter, second chapter, and up to 30th verse, Krishna explains this Sankhya Yoga, or he explains the science of soul. How the soul is different from the body, or matter is different from the spirit. And there are two uh, uh, things that are repeated throughout this section. One thing is that uh, unless you understand this simple truth that you are the soul, and the soul is immortal, and the matter is mortal, and the body is doomed to death, we cannot become happy. We will be in grief all the time. We will be in this very, uh, lamentation is a symptom of a Shudra, Prabhupada says. That means Shudra is not by birth. Shudra is one who lacks knowledge. If we lack knowledge, then we become unhappy. That is the point. We are lacking knowledge means we are unhappy. If I know, then I don't cry. We see children always crying. Why they cry? Because they lack knowledge. So once they know, then they don't cry, right? They understand, okay, I am not supposed to cry, because the children, when they are crying, mother comes and pacifies. So what she does, she gives them knowledge. Something is broken or something is lost, children are like so much in panic, so mother comes, pacifies them, gives them knowledge. So knowledge means brahmana. If you don't have knowledge, we are panicking, that means it's a shudra. And because a shudra, definition of a shudra means one who is lament, is a person who grieves for no reason. There is one. So the first 21 verses which explains the spiritual nature from 11th to 30th verse. That nature of I, that means the spirit soul, our consciousness. Now the second section, the second thing is that reality is in reality, you will not be able to understand the soul. I'm sorry, there will be sometimes technical problems like this. You have any questions in between, you can raise your hands. I'm going with my things. Now, we will try to explain how to understand what is impossible to understand. That is, it is impossible to understand the soul. So it is impossible to understand the soul with the help of our mind, because mind is more gross, soul is more subtle. So with a gross thing, we cannot understand subtle things like that. So to understand the soul, one must immerse oneself in samadhi, a very high stage of meditation. So we'll try to explain how we can immerse ourselves in samadhi state. People say this person went into samadhi, deep meditation they call. But I am working in my office. I'm a housewife. I have all my responsibilities. So without leaving our workplace, we can still be in deep meditation right at the place we are. It's not a problem. That's what Krishna is telling. And we are not explaining some abstract samadhi for the sake of which we need to retire to some cave in Himalayas to live in Himalayas with the snakes and spiders and eats, you know, some roots and fruits or some carrot. So, but we will try to comprehend the the soul in samadhi without leaving our workplace. So, in other words, the next section, which Krishna is going to tell from 31st to 38th, Krishna explains what should be done. And the next section from 38 to 53, Krishna explains how uh, how to do what need to be done. And in the previous verses, he explains what need to be done, what we must do in order to understand the soul. So in the following verses, he explains how it should be done properly. Much because it is very complicated thing. So he explains in a simple way what need to be done. And he will just in 8 verses he explains how to do it from 39 to 53. So he's been explaining for this. No, he don't take much long time also. He explains in very few verses. But this is the most important section because in this section, Krishna gives us unique definition of yoga. He contrasts it with the definition of yoga that Patanjali Muni gave. Generally, it is Patanjali Muni Yoga Sutras, which is very famous. It is absolutely different. A completely different definition of which all Bhagavad Gita, yoga, and the whole philosophy of Bhagavad Gita are based on. And this is actually what happens in these verses until 53. And finally, the rest of the chapter, it is very important. What will I get in return? So if I do this, you are telling to practice this. What will I get in return? If I understand I am not the body, spirit, soul, what should I get? Right? So what will I get as a reward of this? What am I coming to? So man always have these three things. Human activity always consists of three elements. Who am I? What should I do? And what will I get? What will I have? Or what one needs to know, what one needs to do, and what will one have as a result. So the last section from the 54th verse to 72nd verse, the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains what we will get. That is called Sthita Prajna section. So what a person can and should become in order to know the soul. And finally, Krishna says that you will become happy, which we all actually want. So ultimately, all these discussions, all these philosophies, all this study, yoga, this, that, ultimately to get one thing only, how to become happy. And the whole Bhagavad Gita is about this only. About begins with the description of crisis, that is the lack of happiness. And Krishna leads us to up to this. He says what we should do, what we should, no, no, how we should do also. In the end, we will receive the reward, right? And we will become happy. So Brahma Nirvana Mrichati. That's what Krishna tells. You will achieve the absolute perfect state of happiness, which Krishna calls Brahma Nirvana. The state of trump of the spirit. So not Buddhist Nirvana, but actually Brahma Nirvana. That is spiritual Nirvana. No emptiness, but a state of spirit trump or triumph actually of over matter, which we want to defeat in this battle. So the fight is to overcome the effect of matter on us, the soul. So this is to say, a kind of we can. This is a brief description of whatever we have, whatever is in the second chapter, and Prabhupada gives the whole second chapter that we need to remember and understand very well how everything is connected and fitting with each other. Now, the qualification of a student to realize the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. And at the very beginning, we have to understand that the first chapter, these two first chapters are especially important because they explain one more thing. What the qualification of student so that he can realize this knowledge. So knowledge is available to everyone. Krishna consciously makes it as accessible as possible. Krishna explains spiritual philosophy in a very kindergarten language. It seems to us that are these are very high level concepts, but it is actually only because we haven't read the Sankhya philosophy. They are very, very technical, very complicated. The Sankhya philosophy that which Krishna explained, the Sankhya philosophy explained by is a very, very kindergarten level, kindergarten teacher for the youngest group of kindergarten, so that everyone can understand without any distortion or uh, impermanent of meaning. So Krishna explains this Sankhya philosophy in a very simple language, but at the same time, we must also understand very well that as Bible says, there were many invited, but few are chosen. So many people come, many people want to find happiness on the spiritual path, but how many of them they really get is very few ultimately. Why? Because they don't understand the simple truth, which Krishna speaks here at the very beginning, explaining this relationship with Arjuna. He says that there are two categories of students. No, he does not say this directly, but he explains this point. There is a category of students who want to learn Bhagavad Gita, who need a teacher for what? There are like one category of student is confident that they are right. They know that they are already right. And they need a teacher to confirm that they are right. So they want the teacher to tell, oh, you are right. I need a teacher as a screen, as an excuse for my rightness. We meet many people we can see like that also, who have this tendency. They say that, no, I'm always right. And we want to, they say, okay, they want to become part. So this is they want to spread the rightness spread everywhere. So there are people who do not want to abandon their rightness. And it may well be that we have seen these people over and it's very difficult for them. What will the student like Arjuna also was initially feeling I am right. And Krishna is brilliantly showing this. So they will also quote scriptures. They study the scriptures for what? To prove that I am right. In order to prove their case. So they will find in the scriptures uh, whatever they are feeling right. So we have in Srimad Bhagavatam, like Prabhupada said that they find everything they need. They will use it logic incorrectly, but they will consistently justify themselves. And that's actually what Arjuna does in the first chapter. Because they will even study the scriptures. Arjuna know the scriptures very well. And the only thing that will happen to them is that they will become more unhappy. They cannot remain happy. This is the problem with people. If we think I am right, we will never learn only anything. Even if we are learning, we'll justify what is right only like that. So from the very beginning, Krishna has been beating Arjuna on the same thing. He says, okay, Arjuna, if you are very smart, so this is the important question. We can ask anyone. If you are so smart, why are you so unhappy? If you are so intelligent, why are you miserable? So if you know everything, why are you unhappy? Why do you need me? So you are a smart person. This is one category of people. But Arjuna, he is a different from this because Arjuna got doubt. He said, why I am not unhappy? Why I am not happy? And at the very beginning of the second chapter, we can see how Arjuna, he begins to surrender. So he will see that how Krishna brings Arjuna face to face with doubts. So usually when a person has doubts, what does he do? He says a lot of words so that no one would guess that he has doubts. The more a person says, how he is right, the stronger his doubts are. And Krishna knows Arjuna is in doubt. And now Arjuna need to understand this himself. And we will see how Krishna does these things absolutely very brilliantly. And we'll discuss to surrender to Krishna. That means I must belong to myself. And this is the essence of the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. What happens to us in this world? So, one very sad thing happens to us in this world. We become dependent on this world. We become part and parcel of the world, disturbing our eye precisely by uh, piece of our material attachment. Because we are attached, that's why we get affected. So, a conditioned soul means a soul trapped in slavery of material attachment. What does this slavery come from? How does this appear? It appears when I give a part of my to others. When I began to identify myself with something of in this world, with my relatives, with my friends, with various material things, and I am enslaved to all this, and I am lost in all this, and I am in debt with these things. And these people, I owe them a debt. And such a person cannot surrender to Krishna. So, this is a very important thing that we will try to understand at the very beginning. So, the essence of Bhagavad Gita is Sarva Dharman Parityadya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. Krishna says, you must surrender to me. But the trouble is that in our current state, in the state in which we are now, we are not able to do this. Why? Because we do not belong ourselves to ourselves. To surrender to Krishna, I must belong to myself. I must be myself. Then I can give myself to Krishna. So what happens to us, like this is a story that many of we can understand. We are trying to go to Krishna. We hear about something. We understood. We must go to Krishna, surrender to God. We must become part of God's. We must go to Him. We must give ourselves. We are trying to do this. But what happens? A terrible howl begins. Everyone shouts, wait, 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 where are you going? You are mine. This is actually what is happening. We are trying to surrender to Krishna while, uh, just a minute. Any questions, comments still no? You are following whatever I am saying? You can say something. You're
Uh,
understanding?
yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Others? Others are understanding? So, You're understanding or not? Others, any comments till now? Of course, we discussed this previously also, but I spoke almost like 45 minutes. I want to know from you some comments. It's too technical. Okay, we will conclude for today. Next week, we'll meet in person. We'll discuss. In this way, I am not also uh, able to see your reactions. So it becomes difficult. We'll end here. Thank you all very much.